Good afternoon, everyone. We are delighted that you have joined us today, and we welcome you to the 2025-2026 Hurricane Resilience Series. I am welcoming you on behalf of the Hurricane Research Institute, Hurricane Resilience Research Institute. This is an institute that was formed right after Harvey. And since then, we've held a resilience series every year in a variety of formats. And the Institute is a collaboration among universities around the Gulf Coast. And it really has focused on a host range of topics over the years within its resilience series. This year, we're focusing on water. It seems to be the topic that everybody is talking about. And we've titled the series Water, the Driving Force of All Nature. This is very true. And today we are fortunate to have with us two stellar speakers who will talk specifically about the Texas Water Challenge. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce both of them, and then they will present, and we will have Q&A, and you can enter questions through the chat at any point during the conversation, during the presentations, and we will address your questions at the end in the Q&A session. So what is the Texas Water Challenge? The Texas Water Challenge basically speaks to the fact that Texas is very vast. And in some ways, we have shortage of water projected into the future. And yet, as many of you know, in the coastal zone and the hill country, we have challenges with too much water. So we wanted to bring those two perspectives by our speakers, and they can share with us what they know about these topics. And hopefully that will spark some interesting conversations. So I am pleased and honored to introduce Dr. Robert Mace, and he will present about Boom to Blue, Water Robustness in a Growing and Warming Texas. Dr. Mace is Executive Director and Chief Water Policy Officer of the Meadows Center for Water and the Environment at Texas State, where he is also a professor. And he has many distinctions. I will not mention all of them. I will just mention that he recently published a book on groundwater sustainability, which is one of the very important sources of water for Texas. Our second speaker is Dr. Amin Kiaghadi. Dr. Kiaghadi is the manager of the Coastal Sciences Department at the Texas Water Development Board, and he is also overseeing the Texas Integrated Flooding Framework. And today he will be talking about some of the very important work that the TWDB is working on in collaboration with many partners to ensure that we are definitely moving in the right direction towards flood resilience. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the mic over to Dr. Mace and begin the first talk.
Very good. Well, thank you for the introduction. Let's get my slide shared. Awesome. Water resources and Texas is a big topic. And so big topic, not a lot of time. So what I've decided to focus on is almost more of a futurist type discussion in the sense of setting the stage of where we're at today in Texas, and in many ways, if not always, the problems that we're facing in Texas are national as well as global. But recognize that, but then also think about, what might our water future look like? There's a lot of good things Texas is doing with water planning, water conservation, but at the same time, we're finding ourselves falling farther and farther behind in ensuring we have enough water for the future. And for the vast majority of the state, we do not consider climate change in our water plans. And I want to say I feel like we're starting to see the implications of that lack of planning as we see communities starting to struggle across the state and having enough water. If you're not familiar with the Meadows Center, we're a research institute at Texas State University. We're located at San Marcos Springs. I'm looking out my window now, right at the springs. We have these glass bottom boats that offer an opportunity to educate people about surface water, groundwater interaction and the environment. And we get more than 140,000 people a year come through here, which is pretty cool. A lot of our student employees are environmental interpreters associated with those education programs, but we also have a lot of students involved with our research projects. And then we are stewards of the headwaters of the San Marcos River here. So I'm working on another book that's called Beyond a Seasonable Drought. My peer reviewers for the book proposal didn't get the pun there, but this says water resources in a changing climate. I think I'm going to change it to water in a warming world because I like alliterations. And the editors are challenging me to think about, what does the water look like in a warming climate, and what should communities be doing? So I'm going to share some of those thoughts, which is kind of where the potentially futurist stuff comes in. Although I'm still pretty conservative on the future stuff. I'd say the future's here. We have the technology. It's just a matter of, where do we get our water in the future? I am declaring war on the word resilience with respect to water resources. Now resilience is important, but I think we use it in the wrong sense. Resilience is getting back up after you're knocked down. And so built-in resilience is failure. Now, with flooding, I think that's a different thing. You probably, you can't avoid necessarily the damages of floods completely. And so there is a coming back from that. But the goal on water resources, at least, is to not have the loss of our water supply in the first place, especially for municipal, industrial, steam electric purposes. Agriculture may be a different story. It certainly is in some parts where, like the Lower Rio Grande Valley, where ag is secondary in use to municipal industrial uses. Really what we want in the water resource world is robustness, and robustness is not getting knocked down in the first place. And so when I think about, the future of water resources for Texas, the country, and the world, it's like we need to be seeking robustness, because imagine the city of Houston running out of water, or a city of Austin running out of water. And there are communities that have flirted very dangerously with day zero, Cape Town most famously, where that term day zero came from. Wichita Falls in Texas during the 2011-2015 drought was 3 months from completely running out of water with absolutely no solution to their problem. And we're very fortunate that did not happen. That has changed, appropriately so, their thinking on water resources up there. And we can learn from these communities that have flirted with disaster in terms of other communities in Texas, across the country, across the world, in building robustness or thinking about robustness. Not everybody can have truly robust water supplies. I love this quote, and people say it. I traced it back to Isaac Klein. Isaac Klein's like the first meteorologist at Texas. He was the dude that was in Galveston during the 1900 hurricane. If you have not read Isaac's Storm, you should, because it's a fantastic book. Even though you know how it ends, it's kind of like the Titanic. You know how it ends, but it keeps you on the edge of your seat. But Isaac Klein is the Isaac of Isaac's Storm. And he has this great quote: Texas is a land of perennial drought, broken by the occasional devastating flood. And so I'm going to talk about the drought aspects here. I used 10 gallons of water for AI to generate this sweaty, sunglassy Isaac Klein. And then for free for Amin, I did a flood version. So another 10 gallons of water there. But I'm going to focus more on the drought and the water supply side. Besides climate change and drought, the other big challenge we have is the fact that we're growing so quickly as a state. When I first started working in Texas, the projections were doubling in 50 years. We're not doubling in 50 years anymore, but pretty dang close, with a 73% projected increase. Hanadi mentioned issues with the hill country. The new water plan that's going to come out in a couple of years projects Hays County, where San Marcos is located, a population of 1.7 million people. The current population of Travis County is 1.4 million people. And of course, that's going to be approaching 3 million, if not exceeding 3 million. So the population projections are pretty stunning. And it's causing also, compounded by drought, causing water supply issues and concerns. Let me be clear. I worked at the Water Development Board for 18 years, and I love the agency, love the people that work there. But you don't hear them talk about the unmet needs in the water plan. The water plan is how much water do we need? How much water do we have with our current infrastructure? I'm sorry, how much water we have demand for? How much water we have with our current infrastructure? And then how much demand we're going to need in the future. Do we have enough water with our current infrastructure? If the answer is no, we have a need. And then what are we going to do to fulfill those needs, like a new reservoir, new well field, water reuse, desalination, water conservation, whatever that is. There's also something called unmet needs that you have to dig a little bit to find these in the plan. And these are needs that the planning groups don't know where the water is going to come from. And to date, those have mostly been irrigation related. A lot of that is actually the vast majority of it, like 85% of it, is the Ogallala Aquifer that we're draining. So we're pumping in at about 6 times the rate the water's coming back in. And then, we've got some, over time, kind of some greater issues on steam electric. So water for, nuclear plants or fossil fuel plants. Mining, a lot of this is where fracking is in, and it looks like we're going to have some thirsty cows. And you'll see here, it's hard to see in municipal, but we're actually, we don't quite have enough water for everybody. And this is 2070. If you look at the current decade for the planning period, we've got a number of communities that don't have enough water today if there's a repeat of the drought record. I've got a grad student looking at that in great detail right now, but something like 30 to 40% of the population in Texas would not have enough water if there was a repeat of the drought record now. Also, as each plan comes out, we fall more and more behind. So that's where that falling behind comes in. Also, there's been an expectation, unwritten expectation, that planning groups in the state, water planning groups in the state, find water to meet all municipal needs. They're starting to struggle. Region L, which is San Antonio, Hill Country, Guadalupe, San Antonio rivers down at the coast, they've proposed 212 rainwater harvesting systems for the Hill Country and Hays County. And now I love rainwater harvesting, so I'm just like, that's awesome. But that's also an indication that they don't know where else the water could come from. And in fact, Region L as a total has 400,000 rainwater harvesting systems to meet supply. We're also seeing direct potable reuse popping up as a supply in Central Texas, which also to me is an indication that we're running out of water. Now you can use direct potable reuse as a water supply, but that's kind of like the last apple on the apple tree in terms of what's easy to get within reach. There's more and more stories about Texas cities struggling with water. This Newsweek article is in reference to a community that relies on Corpus Christi Lake. It looks like they're on a new drought record. Inexplicably, in my opinion, Corpus Christi, bailed on a seawater desal plant. Very expensive. I think they choked at the price, but it's like they're fixing to run out of water. They truly have to pray for rain at this point because that's where they put all their chips. Other communities, this is the Aggies out of Texas A&M, Bryan College Station, joining forces, the Sioux Groundwater District, to try and prevent a groundwater export project that was going to put their water resources from the aquifer in jeopardy. And there's many more stories like this across the state where communities are stopping construction of because they just don't have the water to provide the new constructions. This is also, I think, in part why the legislature has done a lot in this last session to try to advance implementation of new water strategies, because we have lost some industry to Louisiana because we don't have the water, and state leadership is hearing from people. It's like, hey, how come you didn't build that here? It's like, well, you guys don't have the water. Now, Texas is, of course, already pretty dang hot. There was a map I saw this morning, catching up on the world, that Axios published, showing how much longer summer is. For most of Texas, we're almost a month. Summer's almost a month longer now than it was 25, 30 years ago, based on temperatures. And that, of course, has implications for our water resources. This is showing average temperatures of Texas since 1895. And you don't have to be a geologist to see the trend line here, right? We are definitely getting warmer. For a while, we were actually in something called a warming hole, where we weren't showing a whole lot of warming in our part of the world, but that has gone away. And it's an upward trend. And of course, it depends on a number of things, but so far, everyone's expecting it to continue to go up at this trend rate. What's interesting to me is that if you look at kind of what the new abnormal is, which I would say is where that blue line is on this trend, and then carry that across, our normal temperatures for today are warmer than we were in the Dust Bowl and the drought of the 50s. And it's continuing to go up. And this has implications for our water resources. Even if there's an increase in rainfall, you would expect you'll see less runoff off the landscape into our rivers, streams, and reservoirs, and less recharge to our aquifers. John Nielsen Gammon out of Texas A&M did some modeling of soil moisture and Palmer's Drought Severity Index, which is soil moisture dependent. This is on representative concentration pathway 8.5. So it's a high emission scenario, which based on the reading I was doing for the book is probably at this point maybe a 1 in 200 year event if we continue with current policies and actions, which of course policies and actions are changing all the time. But if you wanted, I think we're probably more on a path of RCP 4.5 or SSP 4.5. So you maybe split that red line halfway between the black line. But the point is like this is soil moisture, and the trend is not good. The increasing temperatures are expected to have a big impact on lowering soil moisture. And again, low soil moisture means we're not going to have as much runoff. We're not going to have as much recharge. I think I've got a graduate student working on this in the Hill Country. I think we're starting to see that, at least in the Hill Country, a decrease in runoff, and recharge is harder to evaluate, but at the very least, it does look like there's a decrease in runoff. This is soil moisture, that red line, like 1950s Dust Bowl. That will be normal soil moisture conditions and going even worse. There are other independent studies, and I'm showing you East Texas. West Texas looks worse. So this all keeps me up at night. Now I'll be retired by 2100, unless Steve Jobs or somebody makes a chip that I can download my consciousness to. Probably won't care, but I do worry. I worry about the future, Texas and future Texans. And we need to be thinking about that. And that is not in the state water plan. So that means that we kind of have a rosy view of what's in there. The other thing we're not considering are gray and black swans. So gray swans are the terrible things that we've already dreamt that could happen from climate change impacts on water resources. such as tipping points or cascading tipping points, and then black swans, which we don't know. There's something that we're missing that suddenly happens and causes terrible things to happen, which could lead to failure of rainfall dependent water resources. So long and short of it is we're going to need a bigger water supply. So I'm going to throw out some thoughts on where that might go. And one is using water more efficiently. This was Vision 2020. I can't remember when it came out. It was before the year 2020. It was sort of like, can we get everybody to use 20 gallons per person per day in residences by 2020? We didn't make it. But 20 gallons per person per day in a residence is probably pretty ambitious, but we can definitely do 25. There's been some studies showing that without much change in behavior inside your home, if any change of behavior inside your home, you can easily hit 25 gallons per person per day. And I've seen that in my own household with my wife. We typically bust that though because she's in the shower a long time and she's not responsive to long detailed PowerPoints about how she's affecting the environment. So I've kind of had to leave her alone with her shower time. But if we if average Texan today uses about 80 gallons per person per day in a household, if that came down to 25, we wouldn't have to find more water for the cities and the growth over the next 50 years. So this is probably the easiest water that's out there. Easy in the sense we already have it. It's hard though because you're having to change people's behavior. Another thing that can be done that's happened in Texas to build robustness is conjunctive use. And I call this pure conjunctive use in the sense that you can use one supply 100%. Get all your water 100% from one supply or 100% from your other supply. And so the Canadian River Municipal Water Authority, Lake Meredith, North Amarillo, all these blue lines are pipelines. It's the longest water pipeline in the state. They started having water salinity problems in Lake Meredith, bought some land, put in a well field, built a pipeline to dilute the surface water, and then the lake went dry. Actually had a forest fire in the bottom of the lake at one point. And so that forced them to be 100% reliant on groundwater. And this is depleting groundwater, yes. Right now, the way they're managing is, they'll use the surface water when it's there, use the groundwater when it's not. And managing that way, they think they have a 300 to 400 year water supply. That's not truly sustainable, but I'd retire on that if I was running that system. Now, I have run into problems. They didn't take into account the warming, increasing salinity in the lake. So they're having to use much more groundwater than they thought they were using. So that's an issue. El Paso does something similar with the Rio Grande and their groundwater resources, but they're also running the issue that climate change. They're part of the southwestern mega drought. They're not. The Rio Grande is spending much more time not flowing than flowing, so they're not seeing the benefit. Seawater desal, seems like it can be controversial. I don't see how Texas meets its future water needs without seawater desal. I honestly don't. And I would say that applies nearly to everybody, including Austin, San Antonio, Dallas, Fort Worth. I say Austin's okay for some special deals that would take too long to explain, but Central Texas. And this is a truly robust water supply. The Gulf is not going, it may change names, but it's not going anywhere. And it has a lot of capacity for pulling water out and honestly taking brine concentrates. You have to be careful where you put them and how it interacts with the environment, but it can be done. And so this is quoted in a book someone wrote saying, when I worked for the board at Gulf of Mexico, whatever you want to call it, helps me sleep at night in terms of thinking about Texas water future. This is kind of a newer technology, dew harvesting or atmospheric water harvesting. So this is in Chile, where for eons, natives down there have captured dew in one of the driest places on Earth called an atrapanieblas. But there's now devices that can just you buy one for your house as a whole house water supplier looks about the size of a backup power generator that will generate water, enough water for you for your house. It's not cheap. It's energy intensive on a per acre foot basis or per volumetric basis. It's about the same cost as seawater desalination, but it's distributed, easily scalable. Desal for Central Texas, if it ever happens, it's going to show up in day one on a giant pipe. But these atmospheric water harvesters, they could be scaled in. Let's see how this particular system's working. Yep, collected a lot of Mountain Dew there. Okay, moving on. We can use the city as a source, not only harvesting the atmosphere, but air conditioning condensate. So this is a map I worked with a grad student showing the gallons per year per ton of air conditioning and given an average humidity. So yeah, so down y'all's place, 700, 800 gallons per ton down in the Houston area. Not as productive as rainwater harvesting, but it can certainly be a supply that right now is just typically sent to waste. San Antonio has long required certain large developments to capture condensate. Austin now requires large residential buildings, new residential buildings, to collect rainwater and condensate harvesting, the flush toilets and wash clothes. So this becomes a potential source. So if Greater Houston, by my calculations, an engineer will have to check me, 10 billion gallons of AC condensate a year, which is about 10% of Houston's water use. I'm not proposing we all connect everybody's ACs together into a giant lake and we pull water supplies out of it just for demonstration purposes, that this could be a useful supply. Got a report coming out with Ricardo Briones in the next few weeks on reliable rainwater harvesting. We calculated firm yield for rainwater harvestings for the entire state. And that's what these are: 3,000 square feet of roof, 30,000 gallons of storage. You could have a reliable daily supply in Houston of 140 to 160 gallons per day. And with a water efficient household, 25 gallons per day, you can provide a family of 6 with water in Houston. You can do it in El Paso. You'll be living alone, but 34 gallons per day. This is, I say, drought proof. It gets you through the drought record. You could build in an extra resilience to deal with climate change, changes to precipitation, but this could be a reliable supply. I think in an urban setting, it doesn't make sense for people to generate their own supplies. 30,000 gallons of storage is a lot of water. But maybe you could use a smaller system to offset toilet use and kind of non-potable indoor uses to save water. And you have a backup water tank on your property, so when the grid goes down, you actually do have water on site. So I've thrown out a bunch of ideas out there. My advice at the end of the day is plan for the worst, hope for the best, then expect to be surprised. What I'm encouraging water utilities to do, or water providers to do, is first take a look at climate change and see what you can do to build robustness. But you should also think about the black swan that completely wipes out your water supply. Like what would Austin do if the Highland Lakes went completely dry? And I'm not saying you build infrastructure to deal with that situation, but you might look at what your options are. Maybe you do some things today that give you a head start on dealing with that situation if, God forbid, it ever happens. This might sound like crazy talk to some of y'all, but there are communities all over the world that have nearly run out of water and found themselves in these crazy emergency situations to try and get enough supplies for the future. So in the end, hopefully we'll have enough water, and our thirsty rancher there, or his canteen will be full, cows will be fat and happy, and we can continue on with our day without worrying about where our water's coming from. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mace. As we mentioned earlier, for those of you that just joined us, we will take questions via chat or Q&A at the end of the talk. We are going to move to Dr. Kiaghadi, our second speaker. And as I mentioned, he'll be talking about what the Texas Water Development Board is doing in terms of preparing us for coastal flooding in terms of the other side of the Texas water challenge, too much and too little. Dr. Kiaghadi?
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me today. Uh, and today I'm going to go through an overview of the Texas Water Development Board coastal modeling activities, modeling coastal flooding in drought-prone zones. Um, I want to start by saying that I want to start by thanking my team, Dr. Carla Guthrie, our Director of Surface Water, and Kami Schwambacher, the Assistant Director, and my team, including myself, Mark Lopez, Kyle Wright, Kim Karimi, and Alex Barth, who without them, I couldn't even prepare this slide. So a big kudos to them. The outline of my talk today is I talk a little bit about Texas water conditions, then I move to what type of data the coastal science team in particular is providing, what type of models we are providing, and then at the end I will talk about two opportunities for stakeholder solicitation for our agency. So I want to say that the big minds think alike. I have the same code with Robert shared. So I want to start my talk with that. Texas is the land pertinent to the drought by the occasional devastating flood. This is like showing you how much fluctuation we have with regard to wet and dry years. This is for inland in particular, and you can see from 1895 to 2020, we have like mostly drought and then some occasional flood. So kind of like validate that code. Let me see if I can get rid of this ribbon at the top of my talk. There was a way to get rid of that. I don't think that you all see it, which is good. Anyway,
We
but
don't. We are fine.
good. So basically, when the translation from this figure to reality is this. On the left, you see the flood that is Hurricane Harvey, and on the right, you see a drought that actually the connection between the river and the bay was disconnected because of the drought, because there was not enough runoff and rainfall for that river to stay alive. Again, kind of like similar to Robert, I want to share this. The population in Texas is going to rise. The slope is a little bit lower right now, but that means that people need water. So it also shows you that by 2070, there would be a big deficit of water in state of Texas because the demand is continue to grow and actually our supply will go down. So what Texas Water Development Board do to kind of like address this issue is in three categories. We have financing. We are in a way of the state bank that we provide funding and grants and loans to a variety of water and wastewater treatment plants, water infrastructure, wastewater infrastructure, and flood infrastructure at this point. We do a lot of planning. We have a fantastic water and flood planning group that they are working on various aspects of planning. And we have the science group, which I'm coming from, that we are looking to ensure, to empower the decision makers by providing the high quality data and models. The Texas Water Development Mission is to ensure a secure water future for Texans at the end of the day. With that, I will start talking about data by quoting Kathleen Jackson, the previous TWDB director. The better the data, the better the science, the better the science, the better the policy. So basically, we are not like a regulatory agency. We are just here to provide the best data and best science for people. So I want to start by some of the latest achievement from the Coastal Science Program. Historically, we've collected a lot of basic water quality and water surface elevation and some sort of velocity along the coast. But recently, we just deployed 6 buoys in different bays and estuary system: Corpus Christi, Baffin Bay, West Galveston Bay, Cox Bay, Matagorda Bay, and Trinity Bay. And we are in the process of deploying another 5 for the rest of the estuary systems in the coast. On the right side, you see the buoy that we deployed, and it's powered by solar, and it has various sondes in it to measure DO, pH, conductivity, temperature, and we also have some meteorological sensors on top for the wind speed, for the rainfall, and then wind direction. The idea behind this is like we have a lot of good sensors and stations within the land, but not many that are permanent, that are located in the water actually. There are some sort of like sampling that happens on a dispersed matter that they may go out once a month or once a quarter to do the measurement, but these stations are gonna sit there and they're gonna transmit the data every hour to us, and it's gonna be available through our interface that I'm gonna talk about in a second. So we have the water data for Texas web portal that actually you can have access to the information that I just talked about, plus other stations that we have, and so we have some permanent stations as well. It's a very complicated system, but we did our best to kind of make it super simple. Most of the credit will go to Dr. Evan Turner. I don't know if he's in this talk or not, but he spent a career developing this tool. Basically, it's getting information from the field deployment and through live transmitting to some sort of coding behind the scene, also getting data from API from various sources, and then eventually we'll disseminate data. If you scan this QR code, you will go directly to that web portal, and then you can see various data that we are showing there. The coastal program historically is famous for our environmental flow or the freshwater inflow data that we have. We have an 82 years worth of data, and the way that we calculate those is we get the information from the gauge watershed flow, whether there's a USGS or other gauges, combine that with modeling results that we get from ungauged watersheds, for ungauged watersheds, and then we subtract the diversions and adding the return flows. Those information are coming from various sources, from TCQ or EPA or some other reports that we have, and from there we calculate the surface inflow for the to the bay. So a portion of this is the model. We historically use the Texas rainfall runoff model, or TexRR, that we recently are in the process of modernizing that code, and I will cover that in the next slides. Just showing you the freshwater inflow to Texas estuarine. This is the average value from 1977 to 2022. You can see there is a gradient from the northeast to the southwest. As we move towards the Rio Grande Valley, the average is going to reduce because, and that's kind of, if you look at the annual precipitation, you see similar trend. So to Robert's point, basically, there are a lot of areas that already are receiving some low water. And then I don't have this slide, but if you look at the drought years versus flood years, those numbers are fluctuating a lot in order that the difference between flood versus drought is probably up to like 10 to 12 times difference. So one of the first things that we want to do in the coastal science program is enhancing the quality and the accuracy of our input data to our modeling system. And for any type of hydrologic model, modeling, the most important data set is rainfall. So this is a work that we collaborated with the University of Texas at Arlington, Dr. Nick Fang, to improve the gauge network density, to improve the data that we can get through the gauge network, the rainfall gauge network. On the right, you're looking at the Hurricane Harvey. This is the output of this model, this work, that you can see the hourly rate of Hurricane Harvey in a continuous raster format. The benefit of this work was that we improved the gauge network density compared to other products that are available. We customized the interpolation algorithm to the spatial disruption. So basically, it's using some sort of machine learning, and then it's using radar and gauge data to enhance the quality of the rainfall data. A tailored gauge quality control algorithm, and that's super important because most of products that are out there are reliant on some long-term gauges that they have data, let's say, for 25 years plus, and then they don't use any gauges that they have less amount of like period of record, right? But with this specific tool that we developed, at each time step, in other words, at each hour, we look at what the network of gauges are available, and if they can pass our QA/QC algorithm, then we incorporate them. So at each time step, we are looking at the variable number of gauges that are going to provide information to this algorithm, and that's a big plus because at each time step, we are looking at 500 to 600 gauges that could participate in this versus the old 200 or 300 gauges that was there. This is kind of like show you how I can make it play. This animation, I don't know why it's not working. Okay, here we go. So the way that it works is like the radar data plus the gauge data. We do the calibration from the raw data. We will reduce the RMSE value, and then you can see that eventually we can generate the model with the least amount of error, and then that would be fed to our hydrologic model later on. So it's a fully automated service. We are wrapping up this project probably within the next month or so, and then the final products, the continuous raster data will be available by request, or we are thinking about like creating a dashboard and put it out there. Again, going back to this drought concept, what I showed you at the beginning was an inland flood. There is not much of information about estuarine drought. And that's important, right? Because you may have an inland drought and you may not see that drought in your estuarine system with some sort of delay, or the opposite. You may actually have a lot of precipitation in the upper watersheds, but you don't see that much of water down the stream for various reasons, from like high evapotranspiration or like high infiltration or man-made activities. All of them are kind of like have an effect on this. So that's why that was a motivation for us to actually create it for the first time for the state of Texas, at least, 4 different standardized drought indices for the estuarine system. The idea is we are looking at how many standard deviation difference we observe in the as an anomaly activities from the long-term mean. We are looking at the standardized precipitation index, or SPI, which is kind of figuring out the precipitation deficit for us. The standardized stream flow index, or SSI, which captures the flow deficit. Evaporative demand drought index, which looks at how much water is going to be evaporated to the atmosphere, and then coastal salinity index, which indicates salinity variation. Combined with these 4, we hope that this is going to be a decision support system tool that could help diagnose why you're seeing such a flood, such a drought in your system. Give you an example: if you have high SPI and then maybe high SSI, and then you see high CSI and high eddy, you know that even though your system is receiving a lot of water, it's losing the fresh water because of the evaporation, and that leads to high salinity, and that's important for your ecosystem, right? So if you're in the process of developing a dashboard like this is completely preliminary at this point. It needs to be reviewed and then get the approval and all of that. But the idea is we're going to report the various indices. You can click on different, you can click on different BN estuarine systems, get the long-term time series, compare with other BN estuarine system, and then be able to figure out what portion of the year for each year was considered a drought or versus like a wet condition. Moving towards to another data set that we are working with our TextGeo to kind of like collect bathymetry data. We collected Laguna Madre, the Houston Ship Channel, Neosis Bay, Galveston Bay, and we are almost done with the Matagorda Bay. That's going to be available within the next 2-3 months. And we are going to go to the next year collection, and then we will continue as the fund coming. So please let us know if you have any specific need for a bathymetry collection in a specific location along the coast of Texas. Of course, we're not going to go after like a super small area, but if you feel that there is a specific bay or there is a specific area there is no recent bathymetry data available, let us know, and we will consider that for the next round. And that is kind of like we are following the TIF recommendation, the Texas Integrated Flooding Framework, that we had like a workshop with all the end users of the bathymetric data, and then kind of the experts in this field, and then we had a list of 17 priority, and then we're going one by one through that list to collect the bathymetry data. Another data-related activity that we're doing at TWDB is characterizing sedimentation patterns with hyperspectral remote sensing. The idea is we want to monitor sediment in Texas bays to study how sediment moves and settles. That could inform the frequency of bathymetry acquisition for us, because we can identify the hotspots and then figure out where in the Bay and estuarine system we may need to go and then collect bathymetry data more often. This is a work that we're working with Dr. Khan at the University of Houston, and hopefully we can get some good results within the next 6 to 8 months. So let's move to the models. Now, historically, we have some models for the hydrologic part. We had TextRR. For the hydrodynamic, we had TextBlend. They are outdated, but that doesn't mean that they are not accurate or they're providing wrong information. Simply, they are developed in 1980s, and it's time for them to be retired and then be replaced with more modern models with more capabilities. But any data that we provided in the past years are going to stay the same. We're not going to change them. To the great extent they're presenting the reality out there. So the first step for us was we are improving their quality and kind of like, working on new methodology, like using the genetic algorithm to doing a fully automated recalibration of TextRR model. And then for the text blend, we developed like a new system that that could be used for oil spill modeling, that we provide the information to the Texas General Land Office on a daily basis for them to be able to kind of track the trajectory of any potential oil spill that they may have. But we are modernizing our system. The three main models that we're working on is we have the full 3D hydrodynamic schism model. We are developing a HEC-HMS 2D, not a HEC-RAS 2D, HEC-HMS 2D, which is like a brand new by the HEC headquarter. And we have like a compound flood modeling to identify transitional zone using ATCIRC model. So the HEC-HMS Model 2D is a work that is a collaboration between Texas Water Development Board, the Coastal Science team, the FISCA team, and also the UT Arlington, and then the Army Corps and HEC headquarters and ERDC. It is supposed to basically leverage the rainfall data that I presented in the couple of previous slides, and it's gonna be calibrated both for environmental flow, which is low flow, and flood. So it's going to be two sets of models using for various purposes. We did some kind of like initial running to figure out what the resolution it should have. You can see we divided the entire coast to kind of 9 regions or like 10. And then you're looking at like one of the small ones here that we tested. We figured out the DEM, the digital elevation map grid, should be around 20 meters, and the mesh recommendation should be 250 meters along the coast. However, there are some places that is going to be finer resolution to be able to capture more details on this. The full 3D schism model is a collaboration between us and the Texas A&M Galveston, Dr. Giabidu, and Dr. Kian Park, that we are working with them very closely to develop this model. It's a very full detailed model that goes all the way to kind of like, Louisiana and Florida as well. You can see the level of details in the Corpus Christi and Galveston Bay in this model. Just a full disclosure, this model only covers water bodies at this point. It is not for the purpose of flood inundation modeling. However, on phase 2, as we are speaking, we are adding land to it, which I'm going to talk in a second about it. But for now, it is fully functional on water bodies only. It is the next generation of ocean modeling. It's a finite element model. The current model has almost 200,000 elements. It has a horizontal resolution from 10 kilometers in the Gulf to 30 meters in the shipping channels. We have between 10 to 47 layers to make it full 3D. We have 2 traces, salinity and temperature. We added 25 rivers to this model for now with the USGS gauges, and on a prediction mode, it's going to use the national water model, because this model is going to be used for the next 4 days prediction for the purpose of oil spill trajectory. It has the open boundary coming from the HICOM, and it has the metrology from Global Forecast System. The results of this model is kind of like too good to be believed. For those of you who are not familiar with modeling salinity, salinity is the hardest to model when it comes to the coastal modeling. And you can see how well this model is performing. I had to check this like by myself 10 million times to make sure that these are actual numbers, not manipulated or anything. But the model is doing phenomenal when it comes to salinity in particular, and water surface elevation as well. We have the Texas Baycast system. It's a fully functional based on the schism model. It provides the current water level, salinity, and temperature from like a simulation from the past 5 days to the next 4 days, or like something like that, maybe 9 or 10 days in total. The output will be freely available for researchers and first responders during the spill events. Contact us if you need some information about this model, and then we can share with you the results of this model. And then we are going to kind of we already started phase 2 to add the integrated biogeochemistry and compound flooding aspect to this model. So we're expanding the mesh to fully encounter for land, and also we're going to do some sort of kind of like calibration validation on phase 2, but the full calibration validation for flood is going to be coming on phase 3. We are adding the low elevation land, intertidal wetlands and transitional floodplains, and this is going to be capable of modeling compound flooding by adding more and more riverine systems, even for the ungauged watershed, which basically is going to be fed through that HMS 2D that I showed in the previous slide. So it's going to be rainfall data, comes to HMS, comes to this model. So it's going to have a fully integrated modeling system in the coastal science. We also adding a digital chemistry lab for the Texas coast, integrating the biogeochemistry module, or ICM, that allows us to model important water quality constituents for real near time. For now, we are looking at nitrogen, oxygen, carbon, and phosphorus, and phytoplankton and algae. This is how the kind of like, the system is going to work, but this is going to help us with the coastal, kind of like our ecological studies. We just hired Dr. Alex Bars, who's going to lead our coastal ecology, and he's going to oversee the development of this model. We also have Dr. Kim Karimi, who's an expert in the nutrition, and also she's like our data analysis, so she's going to oversee also this work, collaborating with Dr. Kyle Wright, who's leading this SCISM project. Another project that we are working on is the transitional zones along the coast of Texas using the ATSERC model. This is what we call it the gigantic model. If you remember, the SCISM model had 200,000 elements. This one has 15 million elements. So you can see how, in comparison, this model is bigger. The other model we are running in-house on a computer that we call it Ferrari machine, and on TAC, Texas Advanced Computing Center. This one only can be run on a Texas Advanced Computing Center, and cannot probably at this point be like a fully functional prediction mode. It's going to be a hindcast planning model. But basically, the resolution is similar to the SCISM, but for this one, we actually added 45 major Texas rivers to this model. So just to tell you how big this model, this small box here is actually the entire coast of Texas. And you can see how big this model is to be capable of fully capturing the formation of the hurricanes all the way to the coast of Texas. We ran the model for all historical events that we consider compound flooding. We also used the FEMA study 2010 that they divided the entire state by the entire coast by 5 zones. For each zone, we define a low, medium, high hurricane. We want to stay away from the concept of 100-year, 500-year. We also chose 105 low, medium, high riverine flow or from the BLE studies. And then for the first time, we also look at the timing between these two. So in other words, it is important when the surge is coming from one way and the rainfall or runoff coming from the other way, under what condition they are going to meet with each other. Is it peak to peak of the hydrograph, or is it one of them is receding, the other one is adding, and then vice versa. So we have like a total of 15 different scenarios. I'm just showing you 3 of them here. But when it comes to compound flooding, people think that, okay, it's always going to cause higher water surface elevation. But think about the scenario that you have a storm surge and it's receding, and while it's receding, you have your storm water is coming, and that will increase the velocity incredibly, but also lowering the water depths for you. So you have a more dangerous water when it comes to flushing, but it's going to be lower depths. So we defined a concept called compoundness, which basically, I'm not going to go through the equations, but the idea is this. If you look at a specific location along the coast of Texas for a specific event, you can compare the storm only with rainfall only with both compound flooding scenario. And if there is a difference between these 3 scenarios, you know that you're located in a compound flooding zone. And then the good thing about this model is, like, if you wanna, this is Hurricane Harvey. If you want to model Hurricane Harvey in Trinity, River, and Bay, this is the location that you need to put your downstream boundary condition of a HEC-RAS model. Because if you put it here, you're double dipping basically. And if you put it here, you're kind of wasting computational resources. So that's extremely helpful for future modeling. Also, we are doing a lot of statistical analysis for the 1,200 scenarios that we ran on this study. And the result is going to come with a compound flood map that we tell you that each location along the coast of Texas, what is the probability of experiencing compoundness when it comes to when you want to do the modeling. I don't want to go through this because this is completely different presentation by its own, but I just want to mention that coastal science is also involved in the Texas Integrated Flooding Framework, or TIF project. And then I just want to share this QR code that you can have access to our website, read our first 2 annual reports, plus the third one, or the final one, is going to come out probably within less than a month. And I highly encourage you to read about those. With that, I want to talk about 2 opportunities for the stakeholder solicitation and hear from you all. The first one is for the surface water project ideas. We are seeking project ideas to advance surface water science in Texas for 2026-2027. The submission deadline for this one is 5 p.m. on October 15th. So don't forget to put your ideas over there. The ideas should support planning, conservation, and understanding of water resources like environmental flows, sediment transport, and water availability. And it helps us to shape future TWDB programs as well. If you go to this link that I put there and scroll down to the bottom, you will see the solicitation with some more details and like how what needs to be done. It's a very simple form that you can fill and then put your information over there. The second one, which is a separate one, is for solicitation for flood research projects. This one is due Friday, October 31st. We are seeking projects ideas for research on topics on priority regarding flooding in Texas. Proposed research ideas may be for new projects that support flood planning or flood science, or they may be ideas that build up on previous flood research projects conducted by TWDB. This is the link to go and then learn more about this. So there are going to be 2 separate solicitation, one for surface water, one for flood priority research. The surface water is due October 15th, so you probably want to do that one sooner than later. And the other one is for October 31st, which is the flood priority research. With that, let's connect and answer some changing water question. And then this is my contact info. And with that, I think we are ready to take questions.
Thank you very much. What an amazing presentation, both of you. Much appreciated. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Hanari Rifai, the director of the Hurricane Resilience Research Institute, and I will be serving as a moderator for the Q&A. I will start with all of the questions that came through the chat, and we have a comment from John Zhu. Great presentation, Robert. To clarify a bit, TWDB is doing a study on the effect of water availability by climate change, and the methodology data will be available for next water planning cycle. Aside from or of climate change, do you think the groundwater, surface water interaction, especially excessive surface water pumping, groundwater pumping, causes diminishing in surface water is another factor that maybe we need to think about or pay attention for Texas? Robert?
Yes. So love to talk to you more about what your plans are on the climate change thing. So we should do lunch. In terms of the groundwater surface water interaction, yes, I think that is something to look at and be aware of. There's there's some kind of recent proposals for groundwater production out in East Texas from the Carrizo-Wilcox that the groundwater availability model shows really strong connection between those two. I don't know if that's real at that level or not, but if you believe that model, it's pretty much every gallon pumped from the aquifer eventually is going to come from surface water. So yeah, that's something to look at. And then it goes the other way too, like the Edwards Aquifer gets 85% of its recharge from losing streams. So whatever's affecting runoff is also directly affecting recharge of the Edwards Aquifer.
Thank you for that. Also from John Zhu, further, there could be many ways, methods to solve the future water shortage problem in Texas. Could you point out what method may be the best solution and how to achieve this solution?
Um, the Good question. There's policy wrapped up in there. I mean, if I was king of the world, I would ban all outdoor watering. But there would probably be revolts in the streets, and my mansion and castle would be burned down. So you have to take that into account. But I mean, that would be the first thing is like, how can we use water more, most efficiently, the water we already have, which may avoid us having to spend a lot of money on other things, on more expensive water. If lifestyle change or our culture of water doesn't change, then it almost has to be seawater desal. And again, I'm thinking true drought-proof supplies is what I'm focusing on. Now, water conservation, I should note, water conservation and reuse is only as robust as the source supply. So you can conserve as much water as you want. If the lakes go dry, you're still out of water. Same thing on your reuse system. So so really I only identified kind of two true drought resistant water supplies, seawater desal and atmospheric water harvesting. I think we'll always have humidity. At least Houston will always have humidity.
I mean, did you want to respond to this question?
Yeah, sort of. I just want to add to what Robert said. I want to introduce the third potential source, and that would be produced water that is coming from oil and gas wells. And it's expensive right now, but that's another source that could be thought about.
But it's not robust because those fields will eventually stop producing oil,
Correct.
which
Yeah,
case you'll stop
depending on
having
timeline that
produced
you look,
water.
at least we can conserve and give some rest to our existing water resources.
Yeah, and even today, it's like it's not a good supply for, say, for municipal purposes, because how much produced water you're producing is a function of the price of oil and gas. So it's, there's some other things you have to be careful about there, but it's certainly doable.
Wonderful. Then Lee Leisure asks, why isn't desalination more widely used by Texas Gulf Coast cities?
It's expensive is the big reason. Folks tend to choose the least expensive water first. Unless the politics around convincing people to use water more efficiently supersede desal, but it's the expense. And that was I think the big reason Corpus Christi walked away from it about a week or two ago. But it's coming. It's coming. There are others down in the Corpus Christi area. They're seeking to build seawater desalination plants. I hear there's going to be some more announced, and then Nueces River Authority, 100 million gallon per day plant, looking to run that up the spine of the basin.
Wow. So we have a question for both of you from Zanina Vilmont. It's since it's interconnected between both topics, the question is to both of you. Seems like if we do rainwater harvesting, will then negatively impact freshwater inflow to bays and therefore the environment. Could there be a middle ground where both are satisfied, humans and environment have water? And how can someone figure that one out?
So that upcoming rainwater harvesting report addresses that very question. The short answer is it has, you could argue it has no impact whatsoever. So, and the reason is that kind of water budget, if the landscape was left natural, 86% on average in Texas is evapotranspirated back in the sky. So you really, out of every 100 gallons, you're really only talking about rainwater harvesting stealing, quote unquote, 14 gallons. In urban setting, about half the impervious cover is roof, and half the impervious cover is like roadways and sidewalks and parking lots. And on those systems, the rain that falls is nearly 100% runoff, which is 5 to 6 times higher than a natural setting. So in general, we did the calculations. If every roof in Texas captured every rapid rainfall in an average year, you would still have more water from impervious cover going into the river. So you can collect rainwater guilt-free.
I would agree with that. I think we capture more rainwater today because of all of the development and gutters and all of this infrastructure, which we never captured before. Dr.
Mhm.
Kiaghadi, did you want to add to that on your freshwater inflows versus if they would be?
No, I agree with Robert, specifically for newer development, that excessive water, stormwater will go to a detention pond and it's going to evaporate eventually or going to be infiltrated to some extent. So I don't think that it's going to affect significantly the environmental flow on the coast and estuarine systems. However, it might have some effect on the local ecology of that area that you're collecting water.
Wonderful, thank you. And John Zhu did respond the same in regards to the desal that is expensive and there may be some environmental issues associated with building plants along the coast, one of which is storm surge and flooding. So there are a
Yes.
few tweaks that would need to be kind of thought through.
Build high, build high.
Build high. All right, okay. So David Davies says, how about leak detection and control in municipal water systems? Estimates are that major cities can lose 20% of their pumped water through undetected and detected but not repaired leaks. And Robert,
Yes.
comment?
Yeah, so that's certainly a, quote unquote source or a way to use water more efficiently by decreasing those leaks. There is a cost component there. And for example, Austin, and it has a 100-year water plan that builds climate change and it identifies different strategies. And if I'm remembering correctly, the cost per acre foot for fixing leaks is $26,000 an acre foot. And seawater desal is like $3,000 an acre foot, just to put things into perspective. So it's an expensive source of water. It's not to say we shouldn't be fixing leaks, but there is a point where the cost benefits, you have to start asking yourself, does this really make sense to do this? There are also unintended consequences. Anytime you mess with the urban water cycle or the natural water cycle, you got to be looking for what the unintended consequences are. And some of them may be desirable. But like in Austin, the base flow in Austin's urban streams outside of storm events is nearly 100% City of Austin water, according to isotopic studies that Jay Banner at University of Texas has done. So, and maybe we should fix the leaks and not have that contribute that base flow, but then there's ecological impacts, maybe recreational impacts there as well. And then also that flow isn't all leaks. It's people irrigating, which is increased rainfall, increased recharge, yada, yada, yada.
Wow. Very interesting. Now, the next question probably for Dr. Kiaghadi, and care has to be taken in answering the question as a past user of EFDC. But Aaron Chu says, does SISM make EFDC models obsolete?
I never think about any model to become obsolete or useless or like best or good. The point is we always need like an ensemble of models, right? Each model has its own strengths and weakness and blind spots. To me, the difference between these two is the scale. You cannot use EFDC model probably for the entire coast, but it's gonna probably give you a better result for a smaller base system. So you can use the schism or AdCirc model as your big model and then provide the boundary condition for the EFDC model through these bigger models. It also have some unique capability EFDC, like the sediment transport module, the emerging contaminant module that it has, and then those are unique to EFDC, and there's a reason people are paying money and spending money on those. So to me, there is no right answer here. Is it really depending on your needs?
Wonderful. Well said. John Zhu again. Amin, great presentation. Compound flooding in bay and estuary areas a great finding and may need more detailed studies. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And that TIF project is all about. We're spending a lot of money to have a better understanding of that.
Excellent. Catherine Riverall says, great presentation, thank you. So I add my voice to that. John Su says, Robert, thank you. And then we have from Amin Yalali a question for projects where the focus extends to water quality components such as nutrients, TSS, or contaminants. Do you think SISM is a suitable platform for simulating these processes, or would a model like EFDC, which has built-in water quality modules, be a better fit for these applications?
Again, it really depends on the scale of your project. For us, these nutrients and water quality are not about themselves by itself because that would be another agency that the focus is on water quality. For us, is like a bridge between hydrodynamic and ecological model that we need those variables to be able to do ecological modeling. So if you are interested in doing a small estuarine system or like a small riverine system and do the water quality, probably schism is not your answer. There are EFTs and there are other models that you can use for that purpose as well. But for us, it makes sense because we're looking for the entire coast and maybe entire Gulf as well. And then that would be really good. And then computational is going to be super expensive for us if you want to activate that as combined with hydrodynamic, like the dynamically linked process. So it's going to be like a subgrid for us, kind of like, post-processing that we get the hydrodynamic, put it in the water quality, and then eventually to the ecological.
Thank you for that. A question from Shreya Singh. Do you see a future problem of outmigration because of water shortage? What are your thoughts on it? And that's probably for both of you, but feel free to comment. Amin first and then Robert.
Yeah, if we don't do a good job of making sure we have robust water supplies, I think that's definitely a concern. Just as Katrina hit Louisiana and displaced a bunch of people, like imagine how many people would throw up their hands and go, you know what, I'm out of here if San Antonio completely ran out of water. So yeah, I think that is a risk. And then there are some smaller communities that are saying no to development because they just don't have the water supply at this point. I don't know if that's out migration. It's the development's probably going somewhere else where there is water, but there is evidence of businesses not locating here because we don't have the robust water supplies that they need to do their thing.
Any thoughts to add, Amin?
I would say it's just about cost of living at the end of the day or cost of the business, right? So even with the water shortage, you can bring water, transport it, and all of it's going to be more expensive. So the question is it to the point that you can handle that and you can afford that, or you need to move somewhere else to run your business or even leave?
Wonderful. Nilan Fernando asks for both of you, what are your thoughts on what needs to be done to scalp flood flows for future water supply? The water quality issue, the storage issue, and supply to estuaries are multiple challenges that seem to confound the applicability of using flood flows. It's actually a question I also had, to what extent we could use flood flows to protect against water shortages. So did you want to start, Amin, and then we can go to Robert?
Sure. It's a very, very, very complicated challenge and question, specifically the time scale, right? You have a flood for a couple of days, maybe your water supply is longer, and then the storage and how you want to handle that it's very challenging. Definitely, I think we should do more research towards this topic to figure out if there is any potential way to conserve part of that water and then kind of use it for the future. But give you like a simple example, even during Harvey, even the water that was stored behind the dams was eventually released to the bay. We didn't even use those water for any type of water supply, right? So if we can start small at least and start using the water that we at least collecting through our flood reservoirs and then kind of figuring out how we can kind of use them for a discharge to the groundwater, or we can use them, I don't know, some sort of like having like a secondary system that is going to be only activated when this water is there. Of course, there are water quality and all of that. I did my dissertation on then testing the quality of those water, and it's not terrible compared to what other water that we have on the other lakes. However, there are some concerns with the heavy metals and all of that. But my point is we can start small, going after low-hanging fruits, and then meanwhile do more holistic research to find a better solution.
Robert?
Yeah, I would agree there. It's a storage issue. Where do you put it? There are off-channel reservoirs proposed in the state water plan. There's also new reservoirs proposed in the state water plan, and reservoirs are flood capture devices. That's kind of what they're there for, and that's the water that they're getting permits for to harvest. Yeah, the treatment, like if there was a lot of talk about, oh, Harvey had all that water, let's capture it and put it underground, but generally the geology is such in the Houston area, you have to inject it really. And before you can do that, you have to treat it. So you got to store it and you got to treat it, and that becomes a problem. I agree with, too, it's like you could start with stormwater harvesting, and like Wichita Falls got real serious after they ran out of water, and their airport, for example, has a pretty sophisticated stormwater harvesting system that's allowing them to defer all their outdoor water use with a kind of underground, looks like milk crate kind of setup where they store water underground and then pull it out. They're not having to do treatment because it's not for potable purposes.
Wonderful. I just wanted to add a simple point, which is it's possible because we've done this in energy where we bleed in wind and solar right into the grid, and potentially one could think about a similar model for these intermittent water supplies that are, available during certain times. So it's an
Yeah,
interesting
yeah.
thing to
Just think about this, Hanad. If we had like a water treatment plant in West Houston, and then there could be like a pumping pipeline system that could transfer the water from Addicts and Barkers to that system temporarily for a couple of days, that would be helpful. But again, it needs a lot of more studies.
I do agree. So Matthew Garcia then asks, is the schism model publicly available? And he adds that wonderful presentations from both of you.
So if you're asking the schism in general, yes, it is. It is on GitHub. The one that we developed is gonna become available publicly on a GitHub, so you can actually run this by just clone that in your Linux environment and just go with it. But that's gonna come probably within a month or two.
Wonderful, thank you. And then he adds, additional point, one of the largest challenges with dam supply is sedimentation, O&M, and the design life of the infrastructure. Are there plans to include those degradations into the supply modeling efforts?
My understanding, and Amin can correct me if he knows, is that this is built into the projections of future supplies with current infrastructure and the water planning process. When I was at the board, which was now getting a while ago, the number was we were losing 90,000 acre feet a year in storage. So sedimentation is definitely an issue. I'll just note that I know at least back then it costs just as much to dredge a lake out as it costs to build a new lake. So and then a lot of that stuff you dredge out is a lot of heavy metals in it, and so it's almost, if not a hazardous waste. So this is a problem.
I don't have that much to add, but I know that we have a hydro survey program that each year we go and do a bathymetry of the lake to figure out how much sedimentation is happening. So, but I don't know the other part of is it a part of the water planning or not?
Wonderful, thank you. So Aaron Zhu added the link to the schism model in the chat for those of you that would like to access it. And we do not have any open questions in Q&A. A last chance for anyone to ask a question in the remaining 10 minutes. I do want to thank the audience and the speakers for a wonderfully, curated and presented and answered type session. Really nice.
Great questions. Thanks
Yeah.
for having us.
Thank you for having us. Absolutely, our pleasure.
Absolutely. I want to remind everybody that we have the next talk in October. We will announce the speakers shortly and send an email to open the registration. But it will actually focus on Houston, which in theory is a city living with water, whether we like it or not. So we will have, again, two views that present different perspectives on this dynamic for Houston. And so the series will continue into 2026 with a one monthly presentation, all virtual. So thank you for attending, and feel free to ask questions via email to me or to any of the speakers. Their email addresses are publicly available. And with that, we'll close out the meeting and stop the recording. Thank you very much to both of you.